The winds of Dubai softened, the stars leaned closer, and silence stretched its wings when she whispered his name. That single sound, wrapped in longing, pierced the calm of the royal desert. It was not merely a name, it was a poem, a confession, and a prayer all in one breath. For Sheikh Hamdan, the man the world calls Fazza, that whisper rewrote the language of silence. The universe paused as if it knew that two souls had finally recognized each other in a world too vast for ordinary love. He turned, not because he heard her voice, but because he felt it. It wasn't a call, it was a vibration that reached where sound could never travel. Her whisper carried the ache of lifetimes, the hush of waiting hearts, and the spark of something divine. In that sacred moment, Fazza realized that some names are not spoken, they are felt by the soul before the ears ever catch them. The moon, once his loyal companion in solitude, dimmed its glow, knowing it had been replaced by something far more luminous, her presence. They stood in the quiet, two figures drawn together by something older than fate. The city behind them was alive with lights and laughter, but here, in the desert's embrace, only silence mattered. That silence wasn't empty, it was heavy with words unsaid, poems unwritten, and destinies untold. Fazza, who had written verses for the world, suddenly found himself wordless. For the first time, poetry felt small compared to what he felt for her. His usual eloquence bowed before the purity of that moment. Her eyes reflected a story that no crown could contain. She wasn't a queen, yet she carried a quiet majesty that humbled royalty itself. Her presence wasn't loud, it didn't demand attention, it commanded it. In her simplicity, Fazza saw something eternal. She looked at him not as a prince, not as a poet, but as a man who had been searching for meaning beyond glory. And in that gaze, he found peace so profound it silenced the noise of his world. He wanted to speak, to tell her that she had become the rhythm of his silence. But words, for once, felt like intruders. Every breath between them was more eloquent than any verse he could write. The desert winds circled gently, carrying the scent of roses and sand, a reminder that beauty often lives between extremes. He realized then that silence wasn't the absence of sound, it was the presence of something sacred. In that silence, memories from forgotten dreams returned. He saw her in visions before they had ever met, standing by the moonlit dunes, wearing serenity as her crown. Fate had drawn her from the realm of his imagination into the fabric of his life. It was as though every poem he had ever written was just a rehearsal for this encounter, and every line had been preparing him to understand her voice. Her whisper had completed the echo his heart had been chasing. The moon, humbled by their connection, hid behind a silver cloud. Even the stars blinked slower, as if afraid to interrupt what was unfolding below. Fazza felt the royal world behind him, the duties, the expectations, the glittering cage of fame, begin to fade. For one stolen moment, he was not Sheikh Hamdan the prince. He was Hamdan, the lover, standing before the only person who ever saw him without titles or walls. Her smile was fragile but infinite. It spoke of patience, of love that didn't need to be spoken aloud. She knew that what they shared would never fit within the boundaries of headlines or royal diaries. Their story was not meant for the world to consume, it was for the stars to guard. In her silence, he heard vows more sacred than any promise made in marble halls. She didn't need to say she loved him, she simply existed, and that was enough.
The years were kind to his kingdom, but unkind to his heart. Every triumph he achieved, every medal of honor, felt dim beside the glow of that long-ago night. The world saw a ruler whose wisdom grew with time, but few saw the poet who aged with longing. His silence had turned into an unseen empire, vast, golden, yet built entirely of memories. Sometimes, in the solitude of his chambers, he would write her name on parchment, only to watch the ink fade as if the universe itself wished to keep her identity secret. He never spoke of her, but his heart beat differently every time the moon rose, as though her whisper still echoed somewhere in the folds of the night. On certain nights, he would stand at the royal balcony and gaze at the horizon where desert met sky. The sands shimmered under moonlight, and he imagined her walking there, her presence gentle enough to make even the dunes bow. It was in those moments that Fazza would close his eyes and whisper her name back to the universe, softly, reverently, as though returning a sacred word to its source. He didn't ask for her to return, he only wished for her peace. True love, he had learned, isn't about possession, it's about preservation, about holding someone's essence so carefully that even time cannot harm it. The poets of Dubai often wrote about Fazza's brilliance, how his verses painted love as something divine. But none of them knew that his truest poem was never written, it was lived. The silence she left behind became the rhythm of his soul, and though he shared thousands of verses with the world, the most beautiful one remained unwritten, living only in his gaze when he looked at the moon. That unwritten poem was her, and every night, the stars tried to guess its words but failed, for only his heart held the language it was written in. Sometimes, destiny is cruel not because it takes love away, but because it gives it too soon. She had come into his life at a time when the crown was heavier than ever, when the world demanded a prince, not a man in love. Yet, Fazza often thought that perhaps it was meant to be that way. Perhaps the beauty of their story was in its incompleteness, a love that never needed an ending, because endings are for ordinary tales. Theirs was eternal precisely because it lived in silence, untouched by time, rumor, or reason. The people saw his kindness, his humility, his unwavering calm, and they called him noble. But what they didn't see was that his gentleness was born of heartbreak, a softness learned from the ache of losing something divine. Every act of compassion, every word he spoke with grace, carried the imprint of her whisper. Her love had not left him bitter, it had turned him into light. The silence she gave him became his greatest teacher, it taught him how to listen to the world, to love quietly, and to rule with empathy. On his loneliest nights, he would walk through the royal gardens, the moonlight following him like an old friend. The roses bloomed brighter when he passed.